I would say that this design style is one of the most influential design styles that we have seen. And by that I mean, it is something that you still see today. It is something that is still current and relevant. And yet, I feel like where it originated from, we don't talk about nearly enough. So today, we're deep diving into the Bauhaus style. So this was created by an art and architecture school that was founded by Walter Gropius back in the early 20th century. One of the key characteristics of the Bauhaus style is that its fundamental philosophy was that less is more. It really is the birthplace of that modern, clean, minimalist design style. And many of the very iconic pieces that you will recognize. One of the really interesting things was when the school was created, they really wanted to focus on blurring the lines between the arts and crafts techniques from the previous movements. With the now more industrialized revolution, they wanted to bring that into a mass-produced and industrialized world. Bauhaus design included things like furniture, household object, typography, graphic arts, and architecture. So this style was established after the World War. So a lot of the purpose of creating this school, the Bauhaus Design School, was to create a world post-war of 1919 as a radical new form of design and architecture to really help come and rebuild the post-world era. So one of the really interesting things about this movement and why I really want to touch on it today is that it actually was shut down in the Nazis in 1933. So it actually only had a 14-year run. So the final director of the school, which if you're interested in interior design and architecture, you're probably familiar with the name as it is a very iconic name, and that is Mies van der Rohe. So when the Nazis shut down the school, they actually decided instead of just closing down the Bauhaus movement, that they would take that movement and go international. They really truly felt and believed, the Bauhaus designers and architects, that they weren't going to allow the Nazis to kill the spirit of this movement. So Gropius and other prominent members of the Bauhaus group moved abroad. They ended up in places like Western Europe, the US, Canada, and even Israel. So what happened was the Bauhaus movement then became an international movement. It is most likely that that situation with the Nazis is actually what was the catalyst for this movement becoming as world-renowned as it is even today. By immigrating into these other parts of the world in 1930s, it really influenced and helped develop modernism. So while the Bauhaus movement itself only lasted 14 years, its legacy continues to live on to today. And I'm gonna get into some of the pieces from this movement that you're gonna go, oh my goodness, that's where that came from. Let's jump into some of the key characteristics of this design style. So it is rational, it is simple, and it is functional. The Bauhaus design movement, as mentioned, is about less is more, and it's all about form following function. It's really categorized as a style that lacks ornamentation. It has a real strong focus on clean lines and reducing different elements to their most essential elements. So Bauhaus design, you'll find that it usually features very simple geometric shapes. So think of circles, squares, triangles, very almost rudimentary, primary, you could even say. And with the primary thought, they actually did focus in primary colors. So your red, your yellow, and your blue is really key to their colors that they used. However, there's a little side note here. You didn't see those colors everywhere. They actually had a very neutral color palette. So from a notable look, it wasn't that you had those type of colors everywhere. It was more that those colors were brought in through accents. So one of the philosophies with the Bauhaus movement is that it really wanted to be true to material use. So there wasn't a lot of fuss and overproduction of materials. So what you'll see in the Bauhaus movement is a lot of, cement, glass, metal in a very true form. One of the thought philosophies with the Bauhaus movement was that although a lot of it came from the arts and crafts movement, they were still wanting to also jump on this easily mass-produced movement with industrialism that was happening. So a lot of these, although very simple pieces with simple and raw materials and in a very natural form, the point of that was that it would be easy to mass produce while still keeping the integrity of the original, material that was going into it. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. When you see some of the products, you'll go, oh yes, I know exactly, what they are, and that makes sense. So here are some decorating tips for this style. The style of furniture is streamlined. It has timeless elegance. They work really, really beautifully in a minimalist decor. However, they are pieces that can be used in a variety of different styles. They mix well with vintage, antique, contemporary. You can really incorporate Bauhaus style into many other design styles. And I'm gonna get into some of the pieces very soon that will help you understand what I mean by that. And if you're liking this content so far, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up. I really do appreciate it, and lets me know that you're enjoying this and, algorithm stuff and all that. Anyways, let's continue. So what are the iconic pieces that you're gonna go, oh my goodness, I know that piece? So one of the most notable pieces that came out of the Bauhaus movement is the Barcelona chair by Mies van der Rohe. So if you're anything into design, you are going to recognize this piece. It is iconic. And now you'll see why this style can work with many styles. This piece is a standalone piece. It itself is a piece of artwork. And there are about 1,000,001 knockoffs of this piece. So you really can, bring it into as an affordable design piece as well. You don't have to go out and get an original. Those probably cost $1 gazillion. That being said, what I love about this particular piece is that, as I stated, yes, it looks great in a minimalist setting, but you could have a more eclectic vibe and it still look just as stunning. And that's where the versatility of the Bauhaus movement really comes to play, and how it has become timeless and iconic throughout the ages and throughout different design styles. Another iconic piece that you will be most likely very familiar with, especially now because we're seeing a lot of this style kind of happening right now, so there's a lot of knockoffs of this as well, is the Seska chair, which is also from this era of design, which is the Bauhaus movement, from Marcel Breuer. 1928 is when it was designed. Oh, just the Barcelona chair was 1929, just in case you were wondering. Another iconic piece that was developed by this designer is the Wassily chair. You will still see it. It's actually still sold from Herman Miller. It's a beautiful piece, and this was, again, from the Bauhaus movement. So you'll see by these 3 chairs alone that you have definitely seen these over the course of almost 100 years now. If that doesn't make something extremely influential, I don't know what does. Lasting 100 years as something that we still look at and still go, wow, that's a beautiful piece, and you can still bring that in today and it will just look amazing in pretty much any interior decor that you have, is pretty impressive. Talking about the Bauhaus style, how do we bring it into our space? Let's go back to those primary colors that I mentioned a little earlier, and how I said you're not painting your walls those color, but we are bringing in artwork. The one that comes to my mind, kind of the one that whenever I think of the Bauhaus movement from an art standpoint, is the one that it's black and white squares. I will include a picture here with the red, blue, and yellow blocking in it, color blocking in it. There are many other design styles, but for some reason that's always the one when I think of this style that comes into my head straight away. So you want to bring pieces like that into your space, and that's how you bring in that primary bold colors. I don't think I would recommend like painting a wall that color. It's not really the inspo of this design style. They really did stick with neutral. So white, black, gray, very, very natural, neutral, not overly fussy, and then you bring in that primary color through accents. What's great about artwork from this era is there is 1,000,001 reproductions. I feel like that's kind of a theme with this look, is that there are a lot of reproductions. So you can get a lot of this stuff fairly, inexpensively, because it has been mass produced so much through so many different sources that you could, probably just buy a poster online, have it framed, and it'll look fantastic. What's interesting too is with their artwork, again, these simple geometric forms, very, very rudimentary in its form, and that's intentional. That is a part of this look. So if you look at the original Bauhaus school building, you will actually notice that it is made out of unaltered materials. So it is a reinforced concrete building with a flat roof and a lot of windows. So there is a design point to this. They really wanted to keep unaltered materials like concrete, whether it was a public building or a residence. They wanted to have a space that you could utilize the roof, it could be walked on, also inviting lots of natural light into the space, which is why there were so many windows. And it's interesting because we really talk about the importance of natural light today a lot more than we have for a long time. But Bauhaus way back then, 100 years ago, already knew the value of natural light on the human experience within a space. So the furniture and decor, which we've touched on already with some of the classic pieces, but basically it's a very modern look. I think when you look at the Bauhaus style overall, most of the pieces that came out of that era are very much fitting in that modernist style. A lot of it has a lack of ornamentation. It's very uncomplicated. That's really part of the essence of this look. You'll see materials like steel, leather, canvas, plywood, glass, and even plastics used to create this furniture style. A lot of the furniture focused on those simple geometric shapes, which then carried over into their decor as well. What I love about this style is that even 100 years later, it is still relevant. And you can't say that about a lot of styles. And what I think is really interesting is how much it's influenced other design styles. It's really a catalyst moment for this movement to then filter into other design styles and other movements. It really stands out as a leader in the design style catalog because it's one of those design styles that whether you know a lot about art and design or whether you know a lot about different eras and furniture and all of that stuff, you will probably recognize a lot of these pieces because they have really impacted our world in interior design and architecture and just as a whole. One of the best things about the Bauhaus movement is that even today, it still feels relevant. It seems fresh and new, and there's very little other movements that you could really say that about. If you enjoyed today's video, jump on over and check this one out next. I think you'll really enjoy it, and until next time, bye!